Welcome to this special deep dive edition of the podcast. Today, we aren't just summarizing a book, we are dissecting a manifesto for a different way of living. We are talking about Daring Greatly by Dr. Brené Brown. If you've ever felt like you're living your life behind a mask, always trying to be enough, always trying to be perfect, yet always feeling like a fraud, this hour is for you. The title Daring Greatly comes from a famous speech by Teddy Roosevelt, often called the man in the arena. In that speech, Roosevelt says it's not the critic who counts. It's not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles. The credit belongs to the person who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood. Brené Brown takes this 1910 quote and turns it into a 21st century survival guide for the human soul. The core of her work is a word that most of us spent our lives trying to avoid: vulnerability. For a long time, we were taught that vulnerability is weakness. We were told that to be successful, to be professional, to be a man or a strong woman, you had to have it all together. You had to have thick skin. You had to be invulnerable. But Brené Brown spent 12 years as a research and professor at the University of Houston studying shame and courage. And what she found was the exact opposite. She found that vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, joy, courage, empathy, and creativity. It is the source of hope, empathy, accountability, and authenticity. If we want greater clarity in our purpose or deeper and more meaningful spiritual lives, vulnerability is the path. But here's the catch. Vulnerability is also the birthplace of fear, grief, and disappointment, because you cannot selectively numb emotion. When we numb the hard stuff, the shame, the grief, the fear, we also numb the joy. We numb the love. You cannot have one without the other. In this first segment, we have to tackle the biggest myth of all, the idea that I can go it alone. We live in a culture that prizes rugged individualism, but the truth is we are wired for connection, biologically, neurologically, and spiritually. And you cannot have true connection without vulnerability. Think about your own arena. Is it your marriage? Is it a new business you're trying to launch? Is it your parenting? Being in the arena means showing up and letting yourself be seen when you have zero control over the outcome. It is the opposite of certainty. If you wait until you're perfect or bulletproof before you walk into the arena, you will spend your entire life standing on the outside, looking in, wondering what if. We spend so much time and energy protecting ourselves from being hurt or disappointed that we end up paralyzed. We armor up. We use perfectionism as a shield. We use cynicism as a weapon. But that armor doesn't just keep the bad people out, it keeps our own light in. It prevents us from being seen, which means it prevents us from being loved for who we actually are. Brené tells us that perfect and bulletproof are not only unattainable, they are the enemies of connection. In this first part of our journey through Daring Greatly, I want you to look at your life and ask, where am I standing on the sidelines? What is the armor I'm wearing? And what would it feel like to take it off just for a moment and step into the dust of the arena? In this second part of our exploration of Daring Greatly, we have to go to the dark place. We have to talk about shame. If vulnerability is the light that leads us to connection, shame is the monster that lives in the shadows whispering that we aren't worthy of that connection. Brené Brown defines shame as the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. It is different from guilt. Guilt is, I did something bad. Shame is, I am bad. Shame thrives on three things: secrecy, silence, and judgment. When something happens that makes us feel small or less than, our instinct is to hide it. We bury it deep. We don't tell anyone. But the more we hide it, the more it grows. It's like mold. It loves the dark. The antidote to shame is empathy. Shame cannot survive being spoken. When we share our shame story with someone who has earned the right to hear it, someone who can respond with "me too" or "I hear you," the shame loses its power. But we are so afraid of being judged that we keep the secret, and the secret eats us alive. This leads us to the most common way we armor up against shame: perfectionism. Perfectionism is not the same as doing your best or striving for excellence. Striving for excellence is internally motivated. How can I improve? Perfectionism is externally motivated. What will they think? Perfectionism is a defensive move. It is the belief that if we live perfectly, look perfectly, and act perfectly, we can avoid or minimize the painful feelings of shame, judgment, and blame. But perfectionism is a 20-ton shield that we lug around thinking it will protect us, when in fact it's the thing that's really preventing us from being seen. It is a form of self-sabotage because at its core, it's about seeking approval. And if you are always seeking approval, you are never being authentic. Brené Brown discusses the shame categories. For men, shame is often tied to the fear of being perceived as weak. For women, it's the do it all, do it perfectly, and never let them see you sweat expectation. We are drowning in these expectations. We are never enough of anything. Never thin enough, never successful enough, never a good enough parent, never smart enough. To dare greatly, we have to develop shame resilience. This doesn't mean we become immune to shame. That's impossible. It means when shame hits, when that hot, prickly feeling washes over us, we can recognize it, name it, and reach out for connection rather than withdrawing into our shell. It means saying, "This is shame. I feel like I am not enough right now, but that is a feeling, not a fact." It means reaching out to a trusted friend and saying, "I'm having a really hard time right now. Can we talk?" This is the hard work of the arena. It's not just the big, heroic moments. It's the quiet moments of choosing to be real instead of being perfect. It's the courage to be imperfectly human. Because it is in our imperfections that we find our common humanity. It is through our cracks that the light gets in. We have talked about the arena. We have talked about the armor. We have talked about the shame. Now we talk about the transformation. How do we actually live daring greatly? The answer lies in wholehearted living. Brené Brown identified 10 guideposts for wholehearted living, but they all boil down to one central theme: the courage to be authentic. Authenticity is a collection of choices that we have to make every day. It's about the choice to show up and be real, the choice to be honest, the choice to let our true selves be seen. One of the most important concepts in this section of the book is the idea of foreboding joy. Have you ever had a moment where everything was going perfectly? You're looking at your sleeping child, or you're on a beautiful vacation, and suddenly a wave of terror hits you. You start imagining the worst-case scenario. You start waiting for the other shoe to drop. This is foreboding joy, because joy is the most vulnerable emotion we experience. To feel truly joyful is to be completely unprotected. So our brains try to rehearse tragedy to protect us from being blindsided by pain. But you cannot rehearse tragedy. It doesn't make the pain any less when it actually happens. It just ruins the joy you have right now. The antidote to foreboding joy is gratitude. Not just an attitude of gratitude, but a daily practice. When you feel that wave of fear in a moment of joy, instead of spiraling into what if, you stop and say, "I am so grateful for this moment." Gratitude grounds us in the present. It acknowledges the vulnerability of the moment without trying to numb it. Another key to the transformation is understanding the power of enough. We live in a culture of scarcity. We wake up and our first thought is, "I didn't get enough sleep." We go to bed and our last thought is, "I didn't get enough done." We are constantly measuring our lives against an impossible standard of more. To dare greatly is to embrace wholeheartedness, which is the belief that I am enough. Not I am perfect, not I have it all together, but I am worthy of love and belonging right now, exactly as I am. This requires self-compassion. Most of us are far harder on ourselves than we would ever be on a friend. We have a mean girl or a bully in our head that says things to us that would get us punched in the face if we said them to someone else. Wholehearted living is about talking to yourself the way you would talk to someone you love. It's about being kind to yourself when you fail. It's about realizing that failure is not a reflection of your worth, it's just a part of being in the arena. When we practice self-compassion, we become more compassionate toward others. We stop judging people because we stop judging ourselves. We realize that everyone is in their own arena, doing the best they can with the tools they have. This is how we build true connection, not by being superior, but by being together. In this part of the journey, I want you to look at your joy. Do you allow yourself to feel it, or are you always waiting for the other shoe to drop? Can you say, I am enough? And if not, what would it take to start believing it? We have reached the final segment of our deep dive into daring greatly. We have covered the theory, the obstacles, and the internal transformation. Now we have to talk about how this looks